The train slammed into the station and Ethan's hand closed over mine before I could step back. Suspicion led my fingers to the outside pocket of his coat and found the stiff edge of a ticket. One way, printed city name, early, morning time. I felt suspicion before I let myself feel warmth. My palm kept the heat of his grip while my mind listed what the ticket meant. A planned commitment, an escape I hadn't been offered. Wait, I said, Ethan, what is that? He didn't pull his hand away. He kept his thumb over the corner of the ticket, as if hiding it would change its purpose. It's nothing, Maya. It's nothing for you. His voice was low, careful. He always used that careful tone when he didn't want to say more. A burst of brakes, a hiss of doors, and rain slashed the platform in thin diagonal lines. The shelter's light cut a pool of yellow on the wet concrete. A man in a light coat brushed past, not looking at us, then slowed and looked back. You could see the plainclothes man's eyes catch Ethan's face, and then drop to the ticket sleeve at Ethan's hand. My suspicion shifted into a quick, sore panic. I stepped under the shelter with him. My satchel felt heavier than usual. Ethan, is this about the job? I asked, because Olivia had promised to call with news. Olivia, he folded his hands and avoided my face. His posture tightened. He folded his hands like he was keeping something inside. Maya, some things are complicated. Complicated was a word that never explained an envelope handed across a train station stairwell. Complicated was a hand that didn't return a call for 3 days. Complicated was the old leather jacket that smelled faintly of rain and cedar and things he did not talk about. Olivia arrived running, hair flattened by the rain, phone still in her hand. She leaned in hard enough that her coat brushed mine. Maya, you have to hear this. The company wants you in Portland. They need someone to start next week. They offered relocation. I booked the appointment for Monday. You have to decide tonight. Her words tumbled out without breath, each sentence a new bullet. Olivia, I said, this isn't the time. I'm with Ethan. Olivia looked at Ethan. She knew him by reputation at our diner. She'd baked cookies for his crew once. Oh, Ethan, right? Ethan Cole. You re the one with the trip. She forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. Ethan met Olivia's gaze for a heartbeat. Then he looked back at me. For a second, something like tenderness softened his face. Maya, tell Olivia you'll take it. You re brilliant. The way he had once told me I should take the art class. The way he said practical things to push me forward. Warmth surged, then doubt. He was encouraging me to leave. Why would he do that if he planned to go away himself? My emotions shifted warmth to doubt to a hollow ache. I wanted to ask him to stay. I also wanted to accept the job and leave a life that felt narrow. My voice came out small. Ethan, which city is on that ticket? He swallowed. The plainclothes man on the stairs looked up and cleared his throat, as if to remind Ethan that time existed outside our shelter. Ethan folded his fingers tighter and said, it's for business. That's all. He didn't say the city's name. We moved to the bench under the shelter so we wouldn't be in anyone's way. Up close, I could see the faint crease between his eyebrows. He had a dimple in his left cheek where he smiled. Right now his mouth held a line that made that dimple vanish. He tucked his hair behind his ear the way he did when he was nervous. That small mannerism moved something in me toward hope. The plainclothes man passed a folded note into Ethan's hand so quick I almost missed it. Ethan slid it into his jacket like a reflex. The motion made me more suspicious. I asked him, who is that man? He answered with a laugh that sounded thin. He's a courier, work thing. Don't worry, Ethan, I don't like this. Tell me what the courier said. My words came faster now. I was no longer only afraid of losing him. I was afraid of being shut out. Ethan's jaw moved as he chose honesty and shelter. Maya, Olivia's offer is real. You should take it. For you. For your career. I can't hang a future over you right now. You don't get to decide for me. Ethan Cole, I named him on purpose. Tell me what your plans are. I looked at his hands, at the faint smudge of ink on his knuckle. I thought of the ticket. I thought of the courier. My suspicion hardened into a direct demand. He stared at the coffee, stain on the bench between us as if the stain contained answers. Then he lifted his head. I'm connected to something I can't explain yet. I won't drag you into it. His voice thinned on the last words. Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. She showed it to me like evidence at a table. The photograph was a grainy snapshot of Ethan leaving a meeting with a man I didn't recognize. On the back, someone had printed a time and a name that didn't match any of his social accounts. "Mayor, look at this. Olivia." It was left at my office. They slid it under my door with a note to get it to you. My eyes moved from Ethan to the photograph and then to Ethan again. "Ethan, why is your face on this?" I asked. He flinched. He reached for the photo, and Olivia put it closer to me instead. "Maya, you need to choose the job. You need to be safe." "We don't know what he's tied to," she it with a speed that left no room for my response. The plainclothes man returned to the top of the stairs and watched. He looked like someone waiting for curtain call. I felt my heartbeat move to my throat. My suspicion twisted into fear. I stood up too fast and my satchel clattered. A paper cup skittered into the gutter. A conductor called the names of the destinations. The rain made everything sound sharper. We left the shelter and walked across the concourse to a cafe that still had light and coffee heat within. The cafe was a small room with a counter that smelled like sugar and brewed beans. We took a table by the window. Ethan's hand hovered near mine on the table for a moment and then retreated. "Mayor, sit, talk to me. Tell me what you want." His voice returned to that low steadiness I recognized. "Ethan, I want to know if you're relieving me or hiding something." My words were short. I used his name so he couldn't avoid the weight of them. He looked down into his cup, and I could see his hands fold together. "I can't tell you everything. I wish I could." Silence held between us for a heartbeat. I watched him through the fogged glass where the streetlight pooled gold. My stomach tightened. I felt the second emotion shift, clarity cracking into panic. Ethan stepped outside. The cafe's door chimed behind him. I could hear the click of rain on his jacket. He took a phone call at the lamplight and his voice went taut. When he came back inside, he kept his answer short and closed. "Everything's fine. I'm fine. Don't let this ruin the job. Take it. Start the week." The last part like he was giving me a direction rather than asking me to choose. Olivia waited until our cups were empty. Her hands were damp from the rain. "Maya, if this is about safety, you have to put yourself first. Portland is not a small step. It's a new life. You deserve it." She leaned forward and took my hand. "Please." Her voice broke on that one word. "Olivia." I used her name because I wanted to keep the thread of friendship steady. She had been my roommate, my early morning confidant, the person who wired me back checks when I couldn't make rent. She was not the kind of person to hand over a photograph unless she meant something urgent. We left the cafe together. On the narrow street outside, a lamplight turned the rain into a curtain of fine glass beads. A delivery van idled at the curb. The city smelled like wet asphalt and hot metal. Olivia pointed with a quick movement to a man across the street. "May I look?" He left that photo with me after this van pulled up. He was on the phone, nervous. Her fingers tightened on my sleeve. Watch out for the man named on the back. My breath caught. The name on the back of the photograph matched the one printed on the folded note Ethan had tucked into his coat. A name I didn't know. My emotions shifted again, doubt into a prickling fear that bent my knees. Ethan stepped toward the elevated platform as if drawn. He moved faster than the rain. My hand shot out to him and almost touched the hem of his jacket. He turned as the train rolled in, and his face split into a decision that was not for me. At the rail, a conductor called out the train's final boarding. A plainclothes man called Ethan by name from the edge of the platform. Ethan hesitated, then took a step back, folded his one-way ticket into the jacket pocket, and handed the conductor the money for a seat he never took. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. The conductor looked at me and then at Ethan and shrugged with an apologetic lift of his shoulders. I ran after him. I shouted, "Ethan!" The words slashed the air and he turned. His face held regret and resolve at once. He pressed his hand to his mouth and then walked away from the train, toward the stair that led to the tunnel below. The plainclothes man caught up and whispered something. Ethan handed him the folded note from his jacket. The plainclothes man tucked it away and looked up at me with eyes that had no warmth. I reached the platform edge as the train whooshed past. For a second his silhouette was framed by the passing cars, and then the carriage swallowed him. He moved like someone walking into a corridor that shut behind him. The train's wind took the edge of my scarf and folded it. I grabbed at the corner and found a small torn piece clinging to my gloves. The piece had Ethan's scent, rain and cedar. My hands trembled. I chased through the concourse. I demanded answers from a conductor who smelled like oil and cigarettes. Where did he go? Where did he get on? I asked. The conductor's face tightened. That train's gone. I don't know who you mean, miss. He wasn't on it when it left. His answers were flat and helpless. I ran downstairs and upstairs and saw only the blur of passengers and the plastic of their umbrellas. Outside under the street lamp, I found an empty bench and sat because my legs would not let me stand. The rain had lessened to a fine mist. I found, folded on the bench as if placed, Ethan's scarf. It was warm enough to be his. On top of the scarf lay a small, unsigned note folded twice. My fingers fumbled with the paper because they were wet and clumsy. I unfolded it and saw a single line. I left because I couldn't let you be in danger. The words were simple and raw in a way his careful sentences never were. A surprise shift hit me. The fear that he'd abandoned me moved into a different shape, relief frayed with confusion. My suspicion found a new direction. I read the line again to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks. Olivia sat at the far end of the bench. She had called the number on the back of the photograph. A man had answered and given a time and a place that matched the ticket, but refused to say more. Olivia's hands shook when she lit a cigarette and then crushed it out. Maya, someone left the note for you on my desk. I thought they wanted to warn you. I didn't think. She stopped and swallowed. She kept her voice small and steady. We should call the number again. I handed the note to her. Her fingers smoothed it the way people smooth their own racing thoughts. She read the line once, twice, then looked at me with a face that had decided something. Maya, this reads like he made a choice. He chose to leave, maybe to protect you the way he wrote. Her words tried to steady me, and they did, in small measures. A new sound cut across the quiet. A delivery van door slamming. A man in a grey jacket stepped out and walked past without looking at us. The plainclothes man from earlier watched us from the platform stair with folded arms and phone in hand. His posture was not threatening exactly. It was precise, like someone marking off a list of tasks. I felt the last emotional shift come in. From confusion to a fragile acceptance that the night's puzzle had a piece missing, but also a hint of purpose. I folded the scarf along its seam and slipped it into my satchel beside my thin gold locket. I kept the note folded in the locket's chain so I could press it to my chest and feel the weight of his handwriting against my skin. The note had not answered all my questions. It had not explained the photograph, the courier, or why a name I'd never heard of sat printed on an envelope. But it had given me a change in the story's shape. He had not vanished because he didn't care. He had left with intention. Olivia reached across and squeezed my wrist. You can still take the job. Maya, we'll help you pack. We'll drive you up the coast. You won't be alone. The last sentence like she had already loaded boxes into her own car. I looked down at the torn corner of the scarf in my palm. The rain had washed some of the ink away from the folded photograph Olivia still held. Ethan, I said out loud, more to the night than to anyone. Ethan, if you left to protect me, tell me one thing. How will I know when it's safe to look for you? No answer came. The station announced the last train departure for the night in a voice that made everything sound more ordinary than it felt. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. I stood, feeling the weight of choice settle into my knees. I had to decide whether to follow Olivia's plan to start again in a new city, or to stay and pull at the threads Ethan left behind. I had to reconcile a man who touched my hand and hid his ticket with a man who left a scarf and a single sentence explaining why. I took a last look down the tracks. The rails gleamed with rain. A light far away suggested a train's path, but it was not the one that had taken him. I closed my fingers around the scarf and the locket and felt the small, steady loop of gold against my palm. I folded the note once more and slipped it inside the locket, then stood and buttoned my coat. Olivia shouldered her bag. My name. Maya Hart, saying my full name always had the effect of making things real. She waited for me to say what I would do. I touched the locket and then looked at her. I'll take the call with you in the morning, I said. My voice was measured and clear. I took the first step off the curb toward the taxi stand. The bench behind me was empty but for a damp spot where someone had once leaned against the wood. The street lamp threw a circle of light that made the scarf's color warm. I folded the scarf into my satchel and, with rain in my hair and the note at my chest, I walked with Olivia toward the taxi rank, leaving the platform and the train's false promise behind. I pushed open the studio door and Ethan didn't look up. His shoulders were bent over a canvas duffel, and a folded ticket lay on the kitchen table. Suspicion tightened my voice before I could steady it. "Ethan, what is this?" I set my keys on the counter and moved toward him. He froze, the zipper half open, fingers fidgeting with a shirt. The ticket said a city I didn't recognize and a time that started before breakfast. The central problem was immediate. One of us was leaving and the other had an offer to go the opposite way. My chest carried suspicion. My hands went hot and then steady as I reached for the ticket. "My name is Maya Hart. I live in a cramped studio 2 blocks from the river, and I keep a worn leather satchel in the hall." I had spent the past year trying to hold a steady routine of freelance design calls, late night edits, and applications sent because Lena at the agency promised a reply this month. I had planned to answer an email, not a betrayal. I said, "Ethan, explain." My voice was not a question I expected him to refuse. Ethan put the duffel down slowly and met my eyes. "Maya, he broke off, then smoothed the ticket with both hands. He did not hide the date. The dawn light made the ink look sharp. "I have to go home," he said. His baritone was steady, but his hands trembled once. That tremor moved suspicion into accusation. "Home? When did you decide that?" I stepped around the table and found a sweater he hadn't packed. "You left the station like we had plans." I said Ethan's name on purpose. I wanted him to hear it. "You felt it at the station," he said, looking at the corner of the ticket and then up at me. "I didn't tell you because I thought it might pass. I didn't want to drag you into—" He stopped. His voice faltered. I heard the tremor of something between duty and restlessness. He folded his hands and leaned against the counter. The argument began like a quick song. "You didn't tell me how long." I asked. "You dropped a hand on mine in the station and then—" "Maya, Ethan, that was then. This is now." He breathed out, his jaw tightened. The suspicion shifted to anger inside me. "Now he leaves," I said aloud, counting the ways his words slipped. "Now I start a job in another city. How do we do this?" My voice kept breaking along the edges. We moved into the kitchen and our words cut like spoons against the scarred wood table. The windows were still dark outside. He pointed to his phone on the counter. A message from Nora came at 3 a.m. He said, "Dad's blood pressure crashed. I need to be there. I can't just—" He stopped and folded his hands the way he always did when he needed to think. "Nora called earlier," I said. The accusation sharpened. "You didn't tell me you were waiting for a call like that. Did you plan this around them, or around you?" Ethan closed his eyes a second. "Maya, I didn't plan to hurt you. I never chose to make this a surprise. I thought—" He searched for words and found a small, stubborn truth. "I thought I could spare you the worry until I knew what I had to do." He looked at me. "I didn't want to make you pack your life up for nothing." We argued with short lines. "You didn't think of me," I said. "You thought enough not to tell me so I wouldn't worry." "Maya, I thought I'd have time to decide," Ethan interrupted. "I thought I could come back and say I'm staying. I didn't expect—" He looked at the ticket again, and then at me. "I didn't expect him to get sick this fast." Words built into a pattern. Suspicion, accusation, hurt. I paced and he folded and unfolded shirts. Our voices rose and dropped. Each time I said his name, it pinned the moment down. "Ethan, tell me what you want," he answered with a pause, a habit I know too well. "I want to be there for my family," he said. "I also want to know what I'm doing here. I want to be sure I don't run away and regret it later." His admission moved the emotion to a rawer place. I felt betrayed, and then I felt the softer change toward understanding. "Ethan, there's also Lena's call," I said, and I held my phone up. She called 3 times. The call from Lena arrived in a single line of dialogue. "Maya, are you there?" Lena, when I answered, her voice carried morning, decisive and bright. "We need you for the client pitch. They want you to start Monday. Can you sign the documents today?" The choice landed on the table like another ticket. Lena's urgency forced my plan into motion. I looked at Ethan. "Lena offered me the job. Monday. I have to move for the role." I did not soften the sentence. I put the job offer like a second stake on the floor. Ethan's face moved through a series of expressions. He swallowed. "If you go," he said, "I'll go home. I can't ask you to stay for me." I shouldn't interfere with your career, he spoke as if making a simple declaration, but his hands were folded so tightly the knuckles were white. The conversation shifted again. Suspicion receded into a sorrow that made my throat close. I felt the urge to press my palm against my mouth, to keep from saying something I would regret. We moved outside to the rooftop to breathe the air that wasn't the studio's. The sun lifted thin and pale. I took the old wooden bench by the rail. Ethan sat 2 benches away. I slid the ticket out of my coat pocket and placed it on my knee. Tell me what changed, Ethan. Tell me why a month ago you didn't have this ticket, and now you do. My sentence landed with a demand. He looked at the ticket, and then at the city skyline between us. Me about a visit, short and quiet, to his mother's house 2 weeks ago. He described driving through the low hills and stopping at the convenience store where Nora works. He described his father in a chair with a newspaper folded over his knees, the lines at the corner of his mouth deeper than before. Ethan's voice was measured. I went back to see them and Nora me to stay until Dad got better. I said I would. I left that visit thinking I could come back here. Then Marco wrote. He showed the message on his phone. A job offer with a leadership title and immediate relocation. Marco's offer came the same week. He needed someone to start fast. He dangled it in one line. Are you sure you can wait? That was the choice. Family and a career that moved like an express train. He leaned forward and folded his hands. I thought I could pick one and come back for the other. I thought we could hold the small things while the big ones moved. I was wrong when he said Marco's name. The tension shifted into a new register. Professional pressure. Now the decision had 2 pulls, the father and the job. I felt anger flare again, then sink into a quieter sadness. You didn't tell me about Marco at all, I said. You let me believe you were staying. You didn't give me the chance to make a choice with full information. I kept my sentences short. Ethan's jaw worked. He answered in a way that made me see more of his inside. I thought I was protecting you, he said. I didn't want you to make changes for a maybe. I thought if Marco's offer came through and Dad was all right, I could choose. I thought I'd get back in time. The revelation shifted my suspicion into a more precise feeling. I was hurt by his omission, less by the leaving itself and more by his attempt to insulate me. It felt like a decision made without me. We argued again, but the argument had pockets of tenderness. Ethan, I would have told you about Lena the second she called, I said. I would have asked you if you wanted to move with me. I would have tried. But you took that decision away, he breathed in. Maya, I didn't want you to cancel your opportunity waiting on my indecision. I truly didn't. He reached toward the ticket, then pulled his hand back. I failed either way. A text vibrated in his jacket. He read it and his face changed color. The screen lit Nora's name and a line. Dad's BP spiked again. The practical urgency crashed into the emotional argument and raised the stakes. We both moved at once. I stood up and grabbed my coat. Do you need me to drive you? I asked. He looked at me like he didn't know whether to accept help. If you want to come, he said finally. If you want to see them now, come. If not, I understand. That sentence contained another emotion shift. Anger, compassion. I called for coffee, then packed a small bag. I could take the 5-hour ride with him if I wanted. I could also finish the paperwork for Lena from wherever I landed. My decision balanced on a thin rule. I would not cancel the job without knowing for sure. I would not give up the offer because Ethan left. He watched me fold socks into a travel pouch. Maya, don't do this for me. He said, do it for you. His words were clean. I answered with a short line. I will not miss the interview. I will not throw away the offer because you are leaving. He nodded, then added, go. Take it. I want that for you. A new message arrived from Marco. Ethan read it aloud. We need someone who can start this month. Can you fly Monday? He tapped the screen. He wants to lock me in now. That new pressure turned the argument into a negotiation between duty and timing. My hands tightened on the handle of my satchel, so both of us have to leave in opposite directions at the same time, I said. The statement was flat. We are on parallel tracks. The motif of timing, missed chances, made itself present through concrete details. Tickets, message timestamps, flight times. I found an earlier ticket in the pocket of his leather jacket, a crease with a different int date. It was folded small and smudged at the edges. When I held it up, the sunlight caught the ink, and showed a city name closer to ours and a date for a time when he might have stayed. The discovery hit like a physical flip. My suspicion climbed to fury. "Ethan, you were planning to stay and then you didn't," I said. "Why did you change the plan?" He looked at the older ticket like a map out of a life he had almost taken. He answered with a single sentence that reframed everything. "I went home and saw Dad smile crooked at me and Nora me to promise I'd be here if things went wrong," he said. "I left thinking I'd do a short trip and come back. And then Marco offered something that would mean putting down roots someplace else. I thought staying for a while would be safer for everyone, and then I saw how fast everything could change. I panicked. I changed my mind." His voice broke on the final word. The revelation was concrete, a visit, a smile, a plea. It was not a poetic shape. It was a set of facts. We had 5 rapid lines of back, and 4th after that, "You panicked." I asked. "Yes," he said. "You should have told me. I tried not to ruin things for you by worrying you. You made a choice without me." "No, I hoped to keep the choice open for both of us." I was wrong. He my name and then did not speak for a long time. At midday we went to the station. The platform smelled of diesel and coffee. People moved with practical silence. Ethan's bag was strapped to his shoulder. Mine was strapped at my back. We stood on opposing edges of the same platform, measuring the space between a life that wanted to stay and one that needed to move. He reached for my hand and I let him hold it for a single breath. "If you go," he said, "call me when you arrive. Tell me everything. I want to know you did it." He gave a small, crooked smile that I had seen before when he tried to make things gentler. I stepped onto the train for the city Lena named. I watched his figure through the window as the carriage left. He stood by the platform with his duffel and his coat. I watched until the platform blurred into a smear of color. My suspicion changed into a new mix. Grief and an odd, slow acceptance. The train pulled away and I folded my hands in my lap. The decision was made visible. Steel tracks, a folding photograph in my mind of his face. I put my palm flat on the ticket in my pocket and felt the crease where his older plan had been. Weeks later, after the first week of onboarding at the agency and the first nights in a small furnished apartment, an envelope arrived without a return address. I sat at the scarred kitchen table, the same scarred wood I had used in the studio, and slid my thumb under the flap. Inside was a photograph of Ethan on a rooftop bench, the same bench where we'd held the ticket, and a short note. "I'm figuring this out." The photograph had a corner smudged with dirt, a small coffee ring at the edge. I held the paper and the emotion moved into an uncertain place. Sorrow pressed into hope. I set the photograph on the desk and read his short note again. I did not call him. I folded the photograph back into the envelope and slid it into the drawer. Then I locked the drawer and sat for a long time. My choices had led to different cities. The chapter of the morning's fight had closed for now with a concrete object on my desk and a promise unresolved. The house keys fit into the lock of the drawer like a small finality, and I turned them. This chapter began with a ticket and ended with a photograph. The immediate conflict, a discovery of what he packed, resolved into a decision at a platform, and then into a quiet aftermath with a note that kept the next step uncertain. I left the drawer shut and the photograph inside, aware that the next choice would require the next knock on the door, the next phone ring, or one more ticket folded and placed on the table. Ethan shoved the one-way ticket into my palm as the rooftop door slammed shut and a train horn climbed up from the tracks below. Suspicion tightened my throat the second my fingers brushed the paper. The word sat there like a knot I could name and measure. I did not ask a gentle question. I said, "Ethan, what is this?" with my voice caught between air and accusation. He was kneeling at the parapet, coat open, one knee sunk into gravel, the ticket flat on his palm. Dusk pressed into the city gutters beyond the rail lines in honest colors: diesel smoke, orange glass, and wet concrete. The rooftop smelled of cold metal and the laundry float of someone's dryer 2 floors down, details I always noticed when I climbed these stairs to find him. I say my name out loud now because in the hours before I opened this door I had never needed to call myself from the past. The sound of it kept me grounded. I lived 2 streets from the station in a narrow apartment with a worn leather satchel that still remembers my first interview and a thin gold locket I never take off. I teach a design night class 3 days a week, and I keep my head down at the studio most mornings. So the stairs and this rooftop were where I came to think in short sentences. Tonight I had climbed the stairs because Noah sent a terse message. Come now, meet me on the roof. The message was a demand. The city map on my phone read 7 minutes, the time between the train's arrival and the one that could take someone away. Suspicion led me up 3 flights of stairs and into the moment where I could see Ethan's hands tremble even as he tried to make his fingers steady. Ethan. Are you leaving? I asked. He pushed the ticket toward me without meeting my eyes. Take it. Decide. His breath came hard in the cold air. I stepped closer until I could read the printed name of a city I had never visited and the time, early morning, first light. My mouth made a sound that did not form a question. He looked up then, and I saw the crease at his brow deepen in a way I had come to recognize across months and small gestures. Mayor, this isn't only about me. I remember the morning at the station from before. The train had arrived and his hand closed over mine at the platform. That memory was not a blur. It was the feel of his palm and a stiff, edged ticket folded into an outside pocket, and that detail had lodged in my throat like a fishbone. The folded ticket on his coat in the studio, the one on the kitchen table. I had seen that paper twice before, and it had been a secret we had both handled awkwardly. Now the ticket was open and real against my skin. You hid this from me twice, I said. My hands drew the ticket to my face and I could smell the paper, the printer oil. Why, Ethan? Why now? He folded his hands in a practiced motion, the movement he made when he wanted to steady a conversation. Because my brother came tonight, Mayor. I owe something. I have to go. I tried to find another way. I couldn't. He swallowed. No, I am abandoning everyone here. The name No had weight. No Cole arrived on the roof in the second beat of the night. His voice first, a scrape against the stairwell metal, then his face as he pushed through the stair door and framed himself against the sky. He carried the kind of fury that smells like raw wire. He had always been the blunt one, sharp with questions, blunt with accusations. He had said earlier in the studio, "You can't just leave, Ethan." He had said it in words that left no room for argument. No stepped onto the gravel and closed the gap between us. He did not ask for permission to speak. "Ethan, you promised." He began. "No." Ethan cut in. "Not here." His voice dropped from firmness into strain. The argument moved in tight circles before it broke into rapid lines. "You can't run." "No, I am not running," Ethan snapped. "You are leaving us with the—" No started and stopped, as if he had counted the costs aloud. "You think this is only your choice? Do you think I want to choose this, Ethan?" 3 short questions beat across the rooftop air between them. I stepped back because the edge of the parapet was only a few feet from where Ethan knelt. He had put the ticket against his palm like a shield. His knuckles blanched. Lena arrived then, breathless from the stairwell, phone in hand, cheeks flushed as if she had run the stairs 2 at a time. Lena is the kind of friend who keeps a spare bandage in her shoulder bag and a receipt from the CAF when she thinks someone might need proof of an alibi. She had been my neighbor the year I moved in and had become the person who calls first when a plan fractures. "What's happening?" "Lena," and before either brother could answer she pointed toward the stairwell where a man in a dark coat stood backlit and steady, watching the roof with a face I did not know. He did not move. He looked small at first and then purposeful. At that moment the air in my chest slid from suspicion into something sharper. Fear. Fear hit me as a tightening of my fingers around the ticket. My thumb left a crescent crease in the paper. I felt my legs go slightly unsteady. I say the word fear now because it is the only word that fit the physical change, my pulse climbing into the teeth of my throat, the way my stomach contracted. The man in the stairwell did not belong to our argument. He belonged to a danger I had only seen at the edges of other people's lives, in headlines and the thin way people close doors. "Who is he?" I asked. "Do you know him, Ethan?" Ethan's jaw worked. "I don't know him. He showed up tonight." "He knows my name." He turned his face toward the man, and I saw something like recognition and nausea pass through his features. I owe a debt. He'll take me to the train if I refuse." No laughed, but the sound had no warmth. "Then you will not run. You owe this family, Ethan." Those words landed like a hammer. The rooftop forced us into clarity without permission. The train horns blid through the evening, each blast a physical reminder of departure times and lines crossed. I thought of the 2 earlier tickets, the one at the platform when he grabbed my hand, the folded one on his table, and how those papers had always felt like possible exits or traps. Now a police notice appeared in my mind. A folded sheet I had seen when Ethan, fumbling in my satchel, had pulled something out and my fingers had brushed brittle printed words. I had not asked about the notice then. I had supposed it was another adult worry. Tonight it lay between us again, its existence dragged into the open. No pushed forward and grabbed the ticket from my hand, flipping it like a verdict. His fingers were quick and decisive. "This is what you were thinking, Ethan," he said. Ethan did not flinch from No's anger. He had a way of holding himself still, like a man coaxing the worst to pass without breaking. "No. Listen to me, no. You don't get to take her into this mess." His eyes found mine with a bluntness that made me feel exposed. "Maya, you don't understand what he's avoiding." The words were an attempt at protection dressed as accusation. I refused to let that sentence stand alone. "No, tell me what this is." My voice was small but steady. No's face closed. Ethan's months of pulling away were not about indecision. He knew things were collapsing. He knew someone was watching him. I told him not to. The rooftop erupted into a new motion. The mysterious man stepped forward, then slammed the rooftop door with his shoulder and advanced along the gravel. He, without preface, "You should have paid when you had the chance." No's color went out of his face. He had been angry and now something colder slid into him. "A calculation. Who are you?" he demanded. The man smiled without humor. "I'm the person you owe, or I represent someone who does. Tonight you either hand over what he wants or someone answers for what he took. I've been paid to make sure Ethan boards that train." He looked at Ethan like an assessor reading a ledger. Ethan rose slowly between the man and me. He put himself along the line of sight so the man had to pass him to reach me. His hand brushed my arm for a second, small, a physical question. "Go down the stairs." "Maya," he said, "please go." I saw the way his shoulders tightened when he spoke my name. The fear in my chest changed shape into refusal. This was one of the emotion shifts I had felt under other pressures. Suspicion to fear to a stripped-down clarity that demanded action. I did not move. Lena snapped to work. She shoved a small roll of gauze from her bag at me and said, "Maya, he isn't bluffing. We should get out of here." Her voice contained an undercurrent I had heard the night someone hit a car in our block, and she called the driver brave. I looked at Ethan. "I won't leave you alone with him." The sentence was short. It did not include speeches about destiny or new beginnings. It included a choice. "No step between me and Ethan. Maya, listen." He began but stopped when the mysterious man laughed softly and produced from his pocket a folded police notice with Ethan's name on it. Someone had stapled a terse warning to the page. It was not a friendly note. The paper had the same sharp smell as the ticket. The paper changed the room. The notice named Ethan and mentioned an old debt and some violent consequence if it were unpaid. No's shoulders folded into himself briefly, as if the weight of a ledger had landed across his chest. "We should go inside," he said. The man advanced, voice low. "Hand over the ticket. Hand over whatever you have. Let him go quietly." He was not threatening with a shout. He was stating terms like a clerk. Ethan folded his hands again and breathed out. His face made decisions. "No, do you want him to take me?" he asked. No's silence was a kind of answer. The man moved faster then, hands sliding into his coat. For a moment I thought of the worst, a weapon. For a second the rooftop was a film of small noises, Lena's breath, the gravel underfoot, the train far below. I stepped forward and caught the man's wrist with both hands before he could finish his movement. My fingers pressed into skin and cold fabric. The man jolted at the touch. "Maya, what are you doing?" Ethan barked, and the word contained both warning and care. I held the wrist like a deadline. "Don't you touch him," I said to the man. He smiled with teeth that did not fit the rest of him. "You were brave." His eyes flicked to no, but bravery doesn't pay a bill. He twisted slightly. I felt the rib of his forearm press into my palms, sudden movement. Ethan lunged. He pushed the man away with force that sent gravel scattering. The man fell back and swore. The rooftop door banged open and someone, No, appeared with a new expression. Not only accusation, but a public grief. He lunged at the stranger and pinned him to the stairwell wall. The struggle lasted heartbeats rather than scenes. It included profanity, a short slam against concrete, and the distant long note of the train horn. When the man broke loose, he started toward the stairwell. "This isn't over. You have until dawn." The words left the same metallic taste as the tickets. Then he went. After he left, the rooftop felt strangely bright for a few seconds, the kind of light that exposes details. Ethan's jacket collar flayed, Lena's breath loud and ragged. The thin scrape across my palm where his coat had brushed me. That external event, the fight, the man's departure, had to change everything. It produced the second required emotion shift. Fear swung into an urgent, angry protectiveness. Lena barked orders. No collapsed onto the bench and put his face into his hands. Ethan stood in the center of the rooftop as if someone had carved a space around him. Dawn. No murmured without looking up. Ethan's voice fell low and flat. "They want me on the first train. They will come back tomorrow morning." The police notice in my satchel from before felt suddenly not like a forgotten paper, but like a timing device. I pulled it out and refolded it carefully. The notice's words were raw and direct. That someone connected to Ethan's past had been reported nearby and requested his presence. There was no detail of who or why, only a bureaucratic tone that masked a threat. I read the lines aloud because the act of saying them allowed the crowd to confirm facts rather than rely on gut instincts. "They want him to leave, Lena. They want him gone by morning." Noah sprang up. "We don't let them decide," he said. Ethan stared at us in a way that made my throat tighten. He had the look of a man who had rehearsed surrender and refused. He stepped toward the parapet and set the ticket on the ledge between us, where the city lights reflected off the coated paper. "I can go," he said, voice worn. "I will take the ticket and I will get on that train if it keeps you safe. If it keeps this thing off our backs." He looked at No. "If I go, maybe they stop coming after you. Maybe they stop coming after Lena. Maybe they stop coming after Maya." His eyes landed on me and the sentence rounded into a question. No's face broke. "Ethan, you can't walk into that for us." He extended a hand as if he could pull him back. Ethan didn't step away. He folded his hands like he was sealing a bargain. The rooftop, which had been loud and angry, became a room where small choices weighed like old coins. The sacrificial choice came with nothing cinematic about it, no grand speech. Ethan slid the ticket back into his pocket and then, with a motion that was more protective than resigned, he offered himself to the man through the last line he would use. "I will go to them. I'll tell them I owe. I'll make a deal. I'll take the train if that's what it takes." He turned to me and said, "Maya, go home." Please, the sentence had no flourish. It had an instruction and the wish to hide pain behind command. I had a dozen things I could have said. I could have argued that we could call the police. I could have tried to bargain for another solution. But my hands felt thick with the residue of months, tickets, folded papers, quiet absences. The emotion that tugged at me then was not a single name. It was a mixture. Loyalty folded into anger, folded into the fierce desire not to be the reason someone else got hurt. The third emotion shift slid into place. From protectiveness to a clear, hard resolve. I stepped between Ethan and the parapet. I put my palm on his jacket over his heart. "No," I said, "I will not be collateral. You do not send me away like I'm the problem." Ethan's shoulders dropped in a way that made something like a sob loosen in his chest. He reached for my hand and gripped it like a proof. No ran a hand through his hair and then tossed his head toward the stairwell. "You heard him. We don't let them decide, we fight. We don't run." His voice carried the old family stubbornness. Lena crouched and found a scrap of cloth in her bag. She pressed it into Ethan's palm where a thin scraped blood. "If you restaying, then get yourself patched up," she said. I looked at the ticket on the parapet and then at Ethan. I thought of the mornings when he had put his hand over mine in crowded things, the early coffee spill we had laughed about, the studio mornings where he had stared at a folded canvas and not at me. I thought of the train platform months ago when he had closed his hand over mine and a ticket had lived in his pocket like an unasked question. I said, "We'll not let them decide to move you. We'll tell the police about this man and the notice. We'll gather proof. We'll find out who sent him." The voice was firm because words can become actions when you set them down. "No, call whoever you need. Lena, get whatever you can from the building cameras. I'll call my contacts at the station. The sentences were short and pragmatic. They were plans rather than promises. No looked at me for a long second and then nodded. We start now, he said. We moved like people redirecting a tide. Lena filmed the stairwell door with her phone. No took the police notice from my hands and photographed it. I called the station's office and asked for cameras covering the stairwell and the platform. Ethan leaned against the low wall and folded his arms around himself. The night had not ended. The threat had not vanished, but it had a schedule now, dawn. We fought midnight and bureaucracy with small, precise actions. We found a thin camera that pointed at the stairwell. The feed had a blind spot, but it caught the man's coat as he slotted through the doorway. Lena put her thumb on the screen and paused. There, he's on the feed, she said. She saved the clip. No scrolled through a string of texts on his phone, while Ethan watched him with a face that made me think of someone trying to untie a knot by feeling each loop. At some point the train horn became a background rhythm rather than a signal. We talked fast, then faster, then with the hammering of deadlines. We made plans to stay near the station in shifts. We decided someone would not leave Ethan alone. We argued about whether to involve the police directly. No wanted to go loud, to call them and tell them about the notice. Lena feared a delay while reporting would trigger someone to speed up their plan. Ethan kept looking at his hands like he could read the future there. After another hour, No reached into his coat and returned with a folded envelope. He held it out to Ethan. We found this in the back of your ledger at home, he said. We think it's tied to what they want. Ethan opened it with hands that trembled. Inside was a receipt for a sum he did not recognize and a business card from a man named Garza. The card had no title, only a number and a city. The paper had the same printer ink as the ticket and the notice. Everything smelled identical. Cheap printer oil and the same machine's heat. That discovery was the twist that changed our understanding. Someone had been manufacturing the pressure against Ethan, creating a paper trail to look like a debt even when the real debt was something else, a setup. Someone is framing you, I whispered. Ethan stared. I thought this was real, he said. I thought I owed money. I thought I was responsible. He looked at No. I never told you because I thought I could fix it quietly. The sentence folded into a confession. No's face moved from fury to sharp assessment. Then we expose it. We follow the paper trail. We make noise. If someone is trying to force you onto a train as a cover, they fail. The words were blunt and practical. There was a short, bright surge of hope, another emotion shift from bleakness to the clean, precise clarity of a plan. Lena clapped her hands once. We can trace the card number. I can go down to the cafe 5 blocks over. They print deliveries for Gaza sometimes. They might have a ledger. Her suggestion was specific and actionable, and it sent us moving again. We worked through the night. No drove Lena and me to the cafe, while Ethan stayed near the roof with the intention of keeping an eye out. He refused to leave the building when we insisted. If they come back when I'm gone, they'll take advantage. I can't do that to you. His voice admitted both his fear and his refusal to be cowardly. At 2 in the morning, the cafe owner shuffled us into a back storage room with a set of old supplier invoices. He frowned and then pointed to a recent stack where name and number matched the card. There was a delivery manifest with a code that matched a route Gaza used. The ledger listed a recipient who lived in another city, an entirely different link to our problem. We were not tracing a simple debt. We were following an organized attempt to displace Ethan. We took pictures of the ledger and then drove back across dark streets. The car smelled of burnt coffee and fabric softener. In the vehicle, Ethan finally spoke and said my name slowly. Maya, if this is a frame, if they're remaking paper to chase me, then they want me gone because I know something else. I don't know what that is, but it explains why they tried to make this look like a debt. The night had turned from a question of leaving into an investigation. Each discovery pushed the stakes into a new shape. We understood now that someone had access to accounts and to a capacity to threaten. The man's warning had not been random. He had been precise. That knowledge reframed the earlier platform memory. The ticket at the station was not only a secret plan. It might have been the first sign that someone was making a place for Ethan to step into when he needed to be moved. The morning arrived with a wet, thin light. We were tired but armed with evidence. The stairwell clip, the ledger photo, Lena's recorded notes. No walked into the police station with our material. I stayed outside with Ethan at the edge of the steps and watched him as he kept his hands in his pockets like a man bracketing a decision. A detective took our statements with a patient sort of skepticism that is not cruelty. It is the job's armor. He promised to look at the footage and to assign an officer to patrol the area at dawn. He wrote notes and assigned names. He did not promise the resolution we wanted, he promised process. No's jaw closed as he listened to bureaucratic rhythms that do not bend quickly. Ethan stood beside me, face flinching when a police cruiser idled past. He gripped my hand once and then released it, as if testing what it meant to stay. I remembered the train platform when he first touched my palm and the ticket had been tucked into his coat. Now the platform was not just a memory. It was a place where the threat could be made real again. The police officer's promise insulated us a little, but there was no guarantee. We waited until the sky brightened and the city took on a thin, washed color. The hour the man had named, dawn, approached like a metronome. Our group planted ourselves in the station caf, rotating positions, keeping eyes trained on the stairwell. Ethan sat against the window with his back to me and fingers managing the edge of the locket I never took off. He wrapped the locket between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a compass. At first light, a figure moved along the pavement outside. Lena stiffened. No went silent. The man from the rooftop walked with the same slow purpose. He looked at Ethan and then at the door, and his gaze sharpened into the fixed line of someone expecting to collect something. He pushed the door and entered the caf. He sat at a table and folded his hands the way a man folds currency. He did not speak immediately. The waiter ignored him because the man had the careful look of a stranger ordering coffee. Then, when the waiter set a cup before him, the man reached into an inside pocket and produced a small envelope. He opened it and took out a business card, the same Gaza card. No rose without saying a word. He crossed the caf and said loudly, "Who sent you?" The man regarded No with the casual patience of someone used to being asked and not answering. "You should mind your own family business," he said. No's face turned red. "This is our business now. You threatened my brother. Who are you working for?" The man smiled thinly and then, in what became the surprising reveal of the chapter, he reached under the table and pulled out a recorder. "You want names. I don't work for Gaza anymore. Gaza is the name on the card because it buys plausible deniability. I work where I am paid. Tonight my employer wanted Ethan gone. My employer is in this city." He tapped the table with a finger. "You know the man who owns the second floor recycling plant, the one who argues with the council. He has debts he doesn't want public. He wanted Ethan out because Ethan found a ledger that showed money moving in ways that would make people angry. Make no mistake. This is political and financial, not personal." No's question was a quick exchange. "Who?" The stranger's answer was not the sort that ties a knot cleanly. He offered a name that connected to a board meeting, a pair of Shell's companies, and a man who had influence in both the docks and the council. The reveal changed our understanding of an earlier detail. Ethan's insistence that his choices were personal now sat beside a new fact. He had seen records that scared powerful people. Ethan's breath hitched when the name landed. He looked like a man who had just found a missing chapter in a book he thought he already owned. "I didn't know they would send someone," he said. Lena moved like a trained first responder. "We've got this on tape," she said to the stranger, placing her phone on the table and opening the clip of the man on the rooftop. The footage played, and people in the caf looked up like children hearing a story that is suddenly about their street. The stranger slumped slightly. He had been prepared to leave with an impression of quiet menace. Instead, he had to contend with being exposed in a room full of witnesses. His advantage had been secrecy. Our advantage had become the opposite. A plainclothes officer who had been at the end of the counter rose when he saw the footage. He came over and said, "Sir, step outside with me, please." The man stood and left without a word. That removal did not erase the ledger or the threat, but it removed the immediate danger. It also released the chapter's final shift of emotion. From threat to a cautious, hard-won relief, Ethan sat back down and took my hand and did not let it go. We left the cafe with an officer's card and a promise to be available for questions. The man who had been hired to move Ethan was in custody for questioning. The larger men he had named were still out there untouched, but the mechanism had been exposed, paper used as a tool to create fear. When I looked at Ethan that morning, he looked both raw and oddly relieved. We stood on the station platform where the trains came and went. Months before, on another platform, Ethan's hand had closed over mine when a ticket had been pushed into an outside pocket. That memory no longer felt like a trap. It felt like the hinge of choice that had carried us to here. Ethan turned to me and said, quietly, "I didn't tell you everything because I thought I could fix it without dragging you into it." I was wrong. I reached up and tucked hair behind my ear, the gesture I always make when I am choosing honest words. "You should have told me," I said. "I know," he said. "We did not speak grand promises. We made practical arrangements. No would help with the legal contact he knew. Lena would continue to gather evidence and support. I would prepare to move if things escalated." The conflict that had defined the chapter, whether Ethan would leave or stay, resolved not in a single heroic departure, but in a coordinated, concrete decision. Ethan would not be forced onto a train by threats. He would stand and we would stand with him. Before we left the platform, Ethan handed the one-way ticket back to me. He had smoothed it with the pad of his thumb until the creases were gone. "Keep this, for now," he said. "It means something different now. It means we have a choice." I folded the ticket and slid it into my satchel next to the thin gold locket. The ticket was no longer a tool someone could use to move him. It had become evidence of the turning point when we refused to be manipulated by someone else's ledger. We walked away from the platform together. The city was starting to wake, lights giving way to pale morning. The man who had hired threats remained a story we had begun to untangle. The city had its own bureaucracy and power, and the work to expose it would be slow and tactical. But as we moved down the sidewalk, Ethan's hand found mine without the pressure of weighing departure. The final paragraph of the chapter is not a flourish. It is a single, concrete beat. A detective called later that day with a follow-up appointment at the station, naming a time when we should return with further evidence. I looked at Ethan and said, "We'll be there." He squeezed my fingers once, and then let go to steady his phone. The decision had been made in pieces. Refusal to be collateral, an investigation begun, a night of exposure, and a promise to return. The rooftop had closed with the man leaving and dawn opening a window to a long process. We walked toward that appointment together.